Hi guys. How to drill a hole? I'm sure most of you have drilled a hole before using a drill. It's not really overly complicated, but there are some fine points to it. So let me see if I can do some of the fine points. Quite honestly, just being able to put a drill bit in a drill can be a challenge. Most people don't know how to do it. Take the chuck key off. When we insert the drill bit, I see a lot of guys, they just drop it all the way down and tighten it, and that's not the right way to do it. You got to, all the way down. There's actually a screw inside this uh, chuck, and you can damage the screw or damage the back of the chuck, or you know. So we want to hold it up ever so slightly, and then we tighten it up with our fingers, and then we come around with our chuck key, and we just give it a little tiny bit of a tighten and go to the next one and give it a little tiny bit of a tighten. Then go to the next one and give it a little tiny bit of a tighten. We don't crank it down just on one. There's three on here because there's three jaws that grab a hold of the drill bit. And we want to make sure that it's directly in the center so it's not offside, or else we're going to get, a wobbly hole. I pick a drill bit for the size hole I want. Now, the size of the drills is actually a little tiny bit bigger than the size of the drill bit. We okay with this? Now, I'm not going to use a handheld drill to drill this hole. I'm going to use my drill press because I have one. I have a very nice one. So I am going to utilize a drill press in order to do this. And I have a special drill bit. Now, this is the right size drill bit for what I'm going to do next. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to tap a hole, and I'll show you that in a minute. Okay. So here is my drill press. It's an old drill press, but it works just fine. Let me get some lighting on this so you can see what exactly I'm about to do. There it is. And it's the same thing with this one. I'm going to insert this drill bit, and I'm not going to insert it all the way. See how it's actually, all the way up to the flutes on the drill bit? So I don't want that. I'm going to drop it down a little bit, make sure this is in the center. Take my chuck key and do the same thing I did on on the handheld drill. All right, so now it's in here and it's centered, and now I can drill the hole. Now I'm going to start this guy up. Now I have a speed control. It's up here. Hang on. And I'm actually going to slow this thing further down. I'm going to take it down to about 300 RPM. It has to do with how fast the tip spins. There's tip speed, how fast it spins, and then there's feed speed, how hard it pushes into the material. Two things that we got to work with on this. And depending on the size of the drill bit and what we're drilling into, it's crucial that we get those two things right. Now, the bigger the drill bit, the slower the tip speed, the slower the feed rate. Okay? And it's the same thing with the handheld drill. So here, I'm going to come down, come into this thing. And I'm just putting a little tiny bit of pressure on it. And you can see that it's removing material. Now, what I'm looking at is I am looking at both cutters, because there's two cutters on this drill bit. So one on each side. And see how I'm getting these nice long little curly cues? When that happens, I know I have the right tip speed and the right feed speed. We okay? So now drill the hole all the way completely through. All right. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to tap a hole in here. Now, there are, there we go. There's a tap, and we also have dies. This cuts external threads, like if I was cutting like a piece of flat stock and making a bolt basically. And this is what I use to thread the hole that I just made. So this is a 1/4-20 NC, national course drill bit, and I got a nice little holder for it. Let's see if it fits. Okay, so now I got a holder for my drill bit, or my tap. Now I am going to drag over. Hold on. My big vise. And then I'm going to take that piece of plate that I just tapped a hole in. And I'm going to get it in here. Now, this hole that I drilled is the correct size for this tap. And I looked it up in my cool little American Machinist book. It tells me for a 1/4-20 tap, I need to drill a hole that's this big. So now this is plate steel, so it actually cuts pretty easily. Now this thing has, it has, I don't know if you can see it, but it has 4 cutter faces. So every, 4 times around, it has a cutter, and then it has these spaces inside here, and that's to let the chips out. So I'm going to get this thing started in here, and starting it is the crucial part, because I want to make sure that it's straight, and it goes, straight in, not off to one side or off to this side or this way or this way. I want to make sure it goes straight in. So I'm going to give this thing a fast look. Yeah, we're okay. And I'm going to start this thing in. Now, I can't just drive this thing home. I have to back up every once in a while. And what that does is when the cutters cut the plate, it like curls up just exactly, like these things did, except much shorter inside here. So I back up to break them off. So the front part of these threads on here cut, and then the back part breaks the chip off. Now, some guys, me included, depending on what I'm doing, will use some oil on these in order to cut them better. Through this plate steel that I'm using, it's a cold rolled plate steel, it's really not necessary. Some stuff it's very necessary. Now, this plate steel is actually kind of gummy. It's it's not hard. I mean, if I was doing stainless steel or something, that's very, very hard and very, very brittle. Or brass or copper, that's like chewing gum trying to go through. Now, this bit that I'm using, this tap that I'm using, is high carbon steel. So this guy is actually very, very hard, but it's extremely brittle. So I got to be really careful. I mean, if you notice, I'm not turning this very far. So now I'm on the cutter, and I give it like a 1/4 of a turn, and then I'm backing up. And if it gets jammed, which it certainly can, I'm gonna, you know, back up and go forward and back up and go forward. And now I'm actually through to the other side. Now, on this piece of plate, this is not actually how I would be doing this in here. I would actually be doing this either on my drill press or on a lathe or on something else, because then I could be assured of getting it absolutely straight. But, you know, for what we're doing here, most of you guys will be doing it by hand. And it's really not that hard. Hold on. Here it is. And here is a 1/4 20 bolt. And it is a little tiny bit loose. Okay, I've drilled and tapped this to what's called a 50% contact. And what that means is the threads, okay, I don't want them to go all the way in, because then it'd make this bolt, this, you know, this tapped hole that I just made, it would make it very, very hard to turn. Now, the drill bit I drilled it a little oversize. So when I cut the threads in it, the bolt doesn't really touch the sidewalls. Okay, it's held back some. It doesn't go all the way in. It's held back some. Now, the hole I drilled will give me a 50% contact on the threads. Actually, it's a little bit more than that, because I used a slightly oversized drill bit from what my 50% contact number was. We okay? So I got this so that it's, you know, I mean, you know, this is pretty standard. This would work. This is just fine, you know, but it's a little loose. Now I can tighten it up using the same tap by drilling a slightly smaller hole. Get it? Now, these dies, if you get a good one, and this is a good one, it's split. See the split right here? There's actually an adjustment. There's an adjustment screw right here for this die. I can open it up a little bit or close it down a little bit. That makes the threads, you know, shallower or deeper. So I have some adjustment on this, on how I want my fit to be. Drilling a different size hole or adjusting the tap or the die so it's the size hole that I want. Now, pay attention. When drilling these holes, you have to be very, very conscious about how fast your tip speed is. We okay? And the reason why is one of heat. If we have too high of a tip speed or too hard of a feed speed, we're not actually drilling a hole. Basically, what we're doing is we're wearing a hole through it, and that generates a lot of heat. If we generate heat, here's what happens. The metal of the drill bit is heat treated. It's tempered. And if I heat it up, if it gets too hot, it loses its temper. So instead of being, you know, hard and able to drill the hole, it gets soft and it doesn't want to drill the hole. And then this cold rolled steel that I have heats up as well. Well, instead of, you know, the drill bit losing its temper, I'm actually putting a temper into the steel because of the heat from the drill bit. You get it? So I'm making, if I do this wrong and I generate too much heat, I'm taking the temper out of the drill bit and making it softer, and the steel is becoming tempered or harder, which you can imagine what that would do to trying to drill a hole in it. It makes it almost impossible. Then I have a great story that goes along with this, but I'm not going to bore you with it. So, tapping a hole, drilling a hole, tapping a hole, how to put a drill in a Chuck. Hopefully that sharpens the pencil a little bit more on this. I mean, it's fairly easy to drill a hole. It's a lot harder to drill a hole correctly. My dad taught me how to drill a hole, and he was a machinist. You want to learn how to drill a hole in something? Ask a machinist to teach you. Man, and I didn't give you the 108-step process either. I gave you the quick one. We good? All right, cool. Thanks.